Back in February, a former classmate and I, we were celebrating the beginning of Lent, and he had made it a goal to quit smoking. I didn't even know he smoked. He was not happy about his smoking, which is probably why I didn't even know he smoked. Out of the blue, he says he's going to quit smoking, and I'm like, what? When did you start? And he said he'd been smoking since he was 17. Okay, and so I realized that I also had an addiction that almost cost me my job. I had a compulsive eating problem. And what's really sad is that my eating hasn't really damaged my health physically. See, the problem is that if I were getting fat from eating, if I were, my mom has type 2 diabetes, if I were at risk of going blind, that would definitely put a pause on it, but I wasn't. What I was at risk at was losing my friends because I wanted to get out of a social setting to go eat. I was at risk of losing my job. I was at risk of getting into an altercation with somebody who was in my way when I was eating. I was at risk of going to jail. See, I took those risks. I didn't take the physical health risks. That's a big problem because those risks can be very abstract, right? They're either happening or they're not, right? You either lose your job or you don't. You go to jail or you don't, right? There's no with weight, every calorie you're eating kind of shifts everything, right? So I didn't have much pressure there until something bad happened. So at the beginning of Lent, we made it a goal. He was going to quit smoking. I was going to quit eating. I called it quitting eating because I like the idea of quitting a whole lot better than having to titrate, where you do everything. Anyways, I stopped eating for 2.5 days that first time, and I felt so good. See, when I my inspiration for wanting to do that was my friend saying that he was tired of going out in the cold. This was February. I think Lent was February 25th. He said he was tired of going out in the cold, which made me worry because eventually it's not going to be so cold anymore. Later on, he said that he was worried about going into the hallway and catching the Chinese flu, but that made me worry. We're not going to have that flu forever. And hopefully he'll have other reasons for not wanting the inconvenience. That's why I prefer to use the word how convenient it is when I talk about my food. I rarely put it in the context of, oh my God, I'm worried when I go to the grocery store. Am I going to catch a disease? Or is it going to be cold? Is there going to be traffic on the way to the store? Do I have to deal with roommates who don't clean their dishes? Because all of that stuff will pass, right? But the fact that eating is an expense, is a barrier, that's probably not going to pass, right? Okay, so we get to the end of Lent. And the final, I think the second to last day of Lent, I was getting worried for him because the weather was starting to ease up. And he also made it a goal to only quit smoking for Lent. So I worried for him doubly for that. So I check in with him on Facebook, and I said, well, how was Lent for you? He said, horrible. And he said he hadn't smoked it, and he missed out on all these occasions because he doesn't smoke. The people at his apartment building smokes, and I said, well, what you do instead of smoking? And then he came up with a list of impressive things that he did. He took up exercising. He learned a lot of new things online. Obviously, everybody was busy online during this time, right? And I said, well, how do you think about the other people in your apartment complex who go out to smoke? How do you think about that crowd? Oh, I'm so glad I'm not hanging with them. And I said, well, what happened? You get into a fight with them? He said, no, just the Chinese flu. And he came up with a list of impressive things that didn't have to bother him anymore now that he's not smoking, and which is good. And it makes me really envious because I can't do that with my food. I really wish I could stop eating altogether. The reason is kind of complicated. Bear with me. But right now I'm in an apartment in Redmond, but at some point I'll probably head back to. I ended up delaying going back to the Rockies because of some people that I know here. But eventually I'll probably head back to the Rockies. It's an 8-hour drive, right? And usually I'll stop in Idaho and have a good day there and then take the rest of the drive. obviously when I'm on the road, cooking can be a bit of a challenge, right? I have a crock pot that I could use, and this plugs into the cigarette lighter of the car. The problem is that it really steams up the car. Sometimes I'll stop somewhere and then I'll look for an outlet out in public. It's not very popular to go out in public and do this nowadays because of what my classmate calls the Chinese flu, right? Especially because I'm Asian, right? Anyways, whatever the case is, if I didn't have to eat though, that trip could be a lot more pleasant, right? The other part of the equation of eating is that eventually the food has to come out the other end, right? And when you're on the road, that sometimes that's not the most convenient thing, right? I'm kind of picky about the kind of bathroom. Not that I'm fearful of catching a disease or anything, but I just hold up to a higher standard than that, right? Sometimes I want to binge work for something, right? I do private tutoring, and sometimes I really love it when I get lots and lots of clients in a row. I kind of just disappear into that world, right? When I get 8 or 9 hours worth of clients in a row and no break in between, and I just disappear into the tutoring world where there's no COVID-19, there's no Black Lives Matter protests, where there's no discrimination against singles. And all of that can just evaporate for however many hours I want to work, right? Unfortunately, if I have to take a break in order to eat, all of that seems to come back, right? Especially you share a kitchen with a roommate, the social distancing and the masks have to come back. If your roommate has a racist view of things, right? My roommate's not very nice to single people. All that comes back. Sometimes work just causes all that to evaporate, but unfortunately I have to take a break in order to eat, right? What else? The odors, it takes time away, right? I want to be using the time I'm not eating to do other nice things in my life, right? Also the expense is considerable, right? I was talking to my former classmate. He spends about $4,000 a year on cigarettes. He used to spend $4,000 a year on cigarettes, and I asked him what he would like to do with it, and he was like, I don't know. He's very vague about things, right? When he realized that he could go, I pulled up my bank statement to show him how much it cost when I went to Gdansk a few years ago, and when he realized he could go there almost 3 times, so he really changed his tune. On his I don't know. He doesn't like Gdansk, but he has other places that he likes. And it made me wish I could quit eating and go to Gdansk 3 or 4 times every year. And it'd be nice. I like those things a whole lot better, especially the scenery. The other problem with Gdansk is when I do go there, food has to intrude again, right? It's such a hassle, you know. It's like an old pet that you don't want to keep anymore, but you don't know what to do with, right? I really can't wait until the days humans graduate from having to eat, right? If we had some other alternative, I'm going to be really excited about that. Of course, once everybody is not eating, I think the benefits will kind of disappear, right? I mean, it's nice when one person goes on a quarantine, but when the whole country is quarantined and there's nobody to serve you at the restaurants or at the bars, that's a whole different story, right? It kind of feels like that, right?